On today's Locked On Mariners, we're going to step in the shoes of Jerry Dipoto and Justin Hollander and try to turn the Mariners into a World Series winner. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Tuesday, November 18th, 2025. You're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. My name is Gonzalez, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Colby Patnode. We've been covering the Mariners for over half a decade now, and today we're doing something we've done since the beginning. We're unveiling our off-season plan, which usually doesn't come out this late, but the Mariners have never played as late into the playoffs as they did last month. So, we were focused entirely on that. The Mariners have also never beaten us to the punch on making a big move before we drop our offseason plan, but that changed the other night. So we'll talk about that here in a few as well. But before we do, I want to shout out our title sponsor today, FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the FanDuel app today. So what is our budget for this exercise? $170 million is the answer. Jerry Dipoto saying shortly after the season ended that he views where they ended the 2025 season as a starting point for the 2026 payroll, which would be about $166 million, which is what we've been working off of the last few weeks and just all of our off-season talk. So we give ourselves a little bit of a wiggle room here with 170, but where are we starting? That's really the biggest question, right? Like, how much money are we actually going to be able to spend over the course of this exercise? So the combined guaranteed salaries for 2026 of Luis Castillo, Julio Rodriguez, Cal Raleigh, JP Crawford, Andres Munoz, and Victor Robles equal $80.9 million. And the combined 2026 arbitration projections, which come via MLBTradeRumors.com, like we always say, they're very accurate with that stuff. And usually if they're off, they're only off by maybe a couple $100,000 really. So the projections of Randy Arozarena, Logan Gilbert, George Kirby, Bryce Miller, Matt Brash, Luke Raley, Gabe Spire, Gregory Santos, and Jackson Kowar equal about $42.9 million, which leaves 11 roster spots to account for on the major league roster that are making the league minimum, which is $780,000 each. And that equals $8.58 million. Then there's Mitch Garver and Jorge Polanco's buyouts, which equal $1.75 million combined, which brings our starting payroll to $134.1 million. So we have about $36 million to spend in this exercise. Some housekeeping notes here, just to get out of the way before we get into the meat and potatoes of our offseason plan. We are, of course, tendering contracts to Logan Gilbert, George Kirby, Bryce Miller, Matt Brash, Gabe Spire, Gregory Santos, Jackson Kowar, Randy Arozarena, Luke Raley, and, of course, all ARB eligible trade acquisitions that we make in this exercise. We are non-tendering Taylor Saucedo and Trent Thornton. And over the course of this exercise, we had to designate Blas Castaño, Jonathan Diaz, Domingo Gonzalez, and Troy Taylor for assignment. We're also protecting Tyler Cleveland from the Rule 5 draft. And then all real-world transactions have been accounted for as of yesterday, which means that Robinson Ortiz, for example, is on our roster here. So before we get into the moves, Colby, any thoughts about the off-season plan you would like to share?
Sure. Lots of players were discussed that ultimately we did not go with. That could be a whole separate episode if we wanted to do one. Also, the AAV thing can get a little tricky. It's real easy for somebody like us who's doing this exercise to be like, oh, well, I'm only going to pay player X $2 million this year, and that's going to give me $20 million because we don't have to worry about 2029 in our offseason plan. We don't do that here. So whatever the contract is that we give a player or that we offer a player, we just assume it's a straight deal. So their AAV is what they would be making in year one. It just gets too tricky to do any other kind of like loophole or anything like that. So we play pretty much straight up here. We know that, teams will backload deals. But just for our purposes here, we just treat every deal as if it's a straight AAV deal. So, could the Mariners get this guy?
We have backloaded deals in the past. Sorry to interrupt, but we have backloaded deals in the past, but we try to do it within reason. Like, we don't try to do anything insane. Mostly though, like the fanciest stuff we'll do is like options and buyouts. That's really it.
Right. Which the Mariners like to do. The few times they hand out, contracts, they do like to have options in them anyways, and opt-outs and whatnot. So, but yeah, we try to play it straight up. Again, we're not trying to trick anybody and be like, oh, well, Josh Naylor signs $92 million. Well, we only pay him $1 million this year. Then we can go get Alex Bregman. And it's like, no, because we know that in 2029, that means you have to pay Josh Naylor $36 million or whatever. And obviously that's not going to happen. So we need to try to play this one straight up money wise. And we actually came in a little bit under budget, which is fine because you have to account for, emergency call-ups during the season and trades and all of that. And, being off here and there in our estimates. So overall, I think it's a pretty good plan, but just know we talked about a ton of players that did not make this plan, and we're not trying to get cheeky with the whole opt-outs or backloading of contracts or anything like that. We're trying to play it pretty much straight up.
And if you want to hear the process of us putting this all together, you can head on over to the Patreon. We did that over the last few weeks worth of episodes over there. And we tried to keep the off-season plan discussion off air to a minimum. So most of our planning for this did happen on record. So if you want to hear that all, that's over on the Patreon, patreon.com/control the zone. All right, let's get into our moves here. And the first move should be pretty obvious. Let's just get this one out of the way because it happened in real life. The Mariners actually beat us to the punch on something. Thankfully, there isn't too much of a difference here, or at least as it's currently being reported. And he was in our off-season plan to begin with, so we didn't really have to change anything here. We're going to plug in the real world deal here, which is 5 years, $92.5 million for Josh Naylor. Our initial offer was 4 years, $76 million with a $20 million fifth-year option. So again, we don't know if this deal is backloaded or anything like that in real life. Those contract details have yet to come out. We just know that it's a 5 year, $92.5 million deal now. But that is, if it's just straight across the board, that is an $18.5 million AAV. Our initial offer was $19 million AAV. So there you go. I guess we could use this time, Colby, since we've already talked a lot about Josh Naylor and his fit and why you had to get this done and all that, a couple of days ago. I guess we can just take this time to, I don't know, get your reaction to the specific contract that was reported yesterday after we recorded on the Patreon.
Yeah, I mean, it's right in line with what we thought. Maybe a little bit under, but not significantly so. I mean, there's really not anything to dislike about the deal. It's 5 years. I'm sure the Mariners ideally would have liked to have gone 4, but again, they didn't want to mess around with this, and you give them credit for that. Just get this done. Don't try and get the best deal you possibly can. Just get the deal done. Who cares if you overpay by a year or by a couple $1 million? It doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. So, yeah, the contract is right in line with what we've kind of assumed it would be all along. We never bought into the whole like, oh, he's going to make $130 million. Like, no, that was never going to be. He might get 6-7 years. No, he wasn't going to. So yeah, I mean, it's right in line with what I thought. I am interested to see the structure, the no trade clause. It sounds like it runs through the full 5 years. We know that the Mariners, when they give out 5-year contracts, like to, have a sunset on those no trade clauses, usually about 3 years into the deal, but it doesn't sound like that's the case. But again, we don't have the full structure yet. We don't know how much this is backloaded. We don't know if the no trade clause is, for all 5 years, or if it expires after year 3, like the Mariners like to do. But just even if it is just a full no trade for 5 years and it's just a flat 18.5 AAV across all 5 years, it's really good value, and it's right in line with market value. The Mariners didn't have to overpay to get Josh Naylor to come here, and that's good. I mean, that's what you want. So there's really nothing to complain about in the Josh Naylor deal.
So we're trading for Brendan Donovan, which shouldn't come as much of a surprise. We've talked about Donovan a lot. We've talked about us wanting a traditional leadoff hitter, wanting to add someone like that to this lineup this winter. And so we're doing that here with Donovan. So we're sending Michael Arroyo, Durangelo Senja, and the 2026 comp round B pick that the Mariners are expected to be awarded. They haven't been officially awarded yet, but they're expected to be awarded that next month. I think that's around the winter meetings that happens.
Yeah.
So we're sending that to them for Brendan Donovan and old friend Raley O'Brien, who's figured out some things in St. Louis to help beef up our bullpen a little bit more here. So what do you think about this deal, Colby?
Yeah, I think it's aggressive. I think it's an offer that is much more based in the realm of reality than some certain Cardinal fans want to believe Brendan Donovan is worth. And I think ultimately, I think it's very aggressive because, Brendan Donovan is a good player. He's a 3-win player. He's an everyday player who can play multiple spots, including some, premium defensive spots. But ultimately, his value, any way you want to shake it down, is roughly that of Randy Arozarena. Yep. And Randy had 2+ years of club control when the Mariners acquired him, and Donovan only has 2, and yet we're paying more for Donovan than we did for Randy Arozarena, at least on paper. So I think this is a totally fair and legitimate offer. I think this is one I could see the Mariners making. I think it would be one the Cardinals would frankly be stupid to turn down. So you want a player that's going to be in demand on this market, you have to pay up for him. And I think we did that. So this is a good, aggressive offer. Again, it's more than we gave up for Randy. And it might not cost as much, honestly. But again, if you want to outbid somebody, which you're probably going to have to do for a player like Donovan, this is how you do it. You get aggressive with it. You don't try and sneak out, every single dollar, ring out every single prospect you can. You say, look, does Brendan Donovan help us? Yes. And we get him for 2 years. Does Raley O'Brien help us? Yes. And we get him for 5 years. So, yeah, does it stink to lose Senja and Arroyo? Yeah. I mean, those guys could help you this year. Probably more likely next year for Senja, but they could help you. But you're trying to improve your squad this year. That's the goal of our offseason plan. It's to go to the World Series, and we don't have before we made this deal, we don't have a second baseman or a third baseman. Now we have at least one of those spots filled at the very least, and it's with a guy who is incredibly consistent, pretty much puts up the same stat line every single year. And if Cole Young pops or whatever, I can move Donovan to third. If Ben Williamson or Colt Emerson pops, I can move Donovan to second. I could put Donovan in right field. Like, he just checks so many boxes for me. He's kind of the perfect player here to go out and get, and he gives me a true leadoff hitter, particularly against right-handed pitching. So I can put Randy back down in the 5 or the 6 spot, and I don't have to put Julio in a position that he doesn't like to be in. So, to me, again, this is aggressive. It is pretty darn good haul for the Cardinals. And that's what you have to do to get players like this in the offseason. So don't worry about, if you can get them for Arroyo and the comp round B pick alone, great, do it. If you can get them for Senja and Arroyo, fine, do it, whatever. But we wanted to be aggressive on this because we would rather overpay in these simulations than be like, we see this all the time, be like, oh, well, you just give up Tyler Guff and Emerson Hancock. That they want young pitching, give up Logan Evans and Emerson Hancock. That'll get you Brendan Donovan. And it's like, no, it won't. So we'd rather overpay in these scenarios than underpay. And I think this is about what it's going to cost. And again, the Raley O'Brien thing is not just a throw-in. He's a legitimate part of this trade. If you guys aren't familiar, go watch some of him. Go look at his Savant page. Dude can throw. He's nasty. And we wanted to add to our bullpen. So we kind of knock out 2 birds with one trade here. I like it.
All right, we're going to go over more of our moves here as we unveil our 2025-26 Seattle Mariners off-season plan in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for making us your first listen. And also thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. We're unveiling our 2025-26 Seattle Mariners off-season plan. Something we've talked about a lot, not just over the last few weeks, but really since the build up to the trade deadline. Luke Raley and Dominic Canzone are very redundant with one another on this roster. They both really cannot coexist on the same roster together. One of them has to go, unfortunately. And so we made that decision in our offseason plan. We're trading Luke Raley to the Cleveland Guardians. And we were wondering, like, is there a relief version of Luke Raley out there? And I think we found our answer. It's Tim Herrin, who had a great 2024 and sucked in 2025. So it's a challenge trade, right? Mm-hmm. The Guardians are hoping that they get a bounce back from Luke Raley. They need offensive help. The Mariners need bullpen help. They need left-handed bullpen help specifically. They've outright said that they would like to add a lefty to the bullpen. And they're hoping that they get a bounce back out of Tim Herrin, who is pre-arb. This actually saves the Mariners some money because Luke Raley is projected to make about $1.8 million in arbitration.
Yeah, about $1 million. It's really not that consequential on the money front, but
no,
sure. I should say for the record, if I were going to trade one of these two guys, I would much rather trade Dominic Canzone.
Yes.
I'm a big Luke Raley fan. I think he's just a better player than Dominic Canzone because he can help you in so many different ways. And it's real easy to see Canzone or to see Raley bouncing back in a pretty sizable way. He was really good in 23 and 24. So I don't make this trade lightly, but and again, I would rather trade Canzone, but I think most teams would also rather have Luke Raley than Canzone as well. So it's kind of tough. If I can make this trade and swap out Canzone for Raley, I would do it in a heartbeat. I don't think Cleveland would, though, and that's kind of the point. Although Cleveland definitely needs help in both center field and the corner outfield, so maybe they do it like that. But this trade, I think it's a fun challenge trade. I think it's interesting. Herrin gives you something that you don't really have out of the bullpen, and that's a big curveball. The Mariners are very much sinker slider heavy in the bullpen. Herrin is more four seam curveball, which is big. I mean, he still throws a sweeper. I mean, so you still have that.
He gets a lot of whiffs on the curve too. Right. Lots of whiffs.
Right. And the fastball
even this year, by the way, in a bad year for him.
Mm-hmm. And the fastball velo is fine. He's a lefty throwing 94, 95. Like that'll play. That's legit. But it's the curveball is the big piece here of Herrin's arsenal, and it's his go-to pitch, and it's still thrown from a pretty low arm angle, like the Mariners like out of that bullpen. So it's a similar arm slot to a lot of guys out of this bullpen, but it's a lefty, and instead of a slider, it's a curveball. So it really is a unique, different look. It gives them a second lefty out of the bullpen. It's one that they can save money with, and it's also one that has a very high upside out of the pen. So I like Herrin. Again, I wish I could get him for Canzone. I don't think you're going to be able to do that, but if you could, great. Absolutely. But Raley, I think, would be very enticing to a team like Cleveland. I think he makes a lot of sense. So again, it's a bit of a challenge trade, but I just don't see any way that you can not move on from either Raley or Canzone this winter. It just seems impossible to have them both on the roster.
So Raley had back-to-back 129 WRC plus seasons in 2023 and 24. Herrin coming off of a 9.32 Ks per nine, 3.43 walks per nine, 1.92 ERA, 2.86 FIP season in 2024. He was worth one F4 flat over 65 and 2/3 innings. And then this year, 949 Ks per nine, 633 walks per nine. So walks, big issue for him this year. 4.85 ERA, 5.08 FIP, negative 0.4 F WAR. The big difference was opponents started crushing his fastball. Opponents were hitting 189 against his four-seamer in 2024. That jumped up to 378 in 2025.
The Mariners have taken on bigger challenges in their bullpen and made it work. Honestly, you might be able to even get like a small lottery ticket from Cleveland on their end of the deal because Raley has been a better player and he's a strong side platoon guy who can play multiple spots. That's more valuable than a lefty reliever, especially when coming off the year he is. So you might actually be able to get a small little bonus in this deal, but the crux of it is one of your lefties that you don't really have room for their left-handed bullpen arm. I think it's a deal that makes sense for both sides.
So this one is not going to be popular at all because we're just outright salary dumping Luis Castillo. We're sending Castillo to the Giants along with $12 million, which will be paid out over the next 2 years for Hayden Birdsong and Trent Harris, a couple of right-handed pitchers that we're going to stash down in the minors. Birdsong with some starting experience, so he's another guy to kind of fall into that group with like Emerson Hancock, Logan Evans, etc. Trent Harris, I think 27 years old, reliever,
big time stuff.
Just an interesting guy to take a shot on. But make no mistake, this is a salary dumping trade. We wanted to save as much money as possible as we could on Luis Castillo, and so we are saving $18 million as far as 2026 is concerned. We felt that was fair for a Giants team that is looking to add rotation help. Castillo, while there are splits concerns and the stuff just isn't as good as it was, even just a couple of years ago, still had a really solid year this year. He goes to a pitcher-friendly ballpark in San Francisco. Felt like that was a pretty decent fit, and maybe that's a shot that the Giants would be willing to take on for $18 million per season rather than the 24.1.
Yeah, again, this is why we've talked about this. We talked about it a lot while putting this plan together. It's just very difficult to improve your team off of where it ended last year without either spending more than the $166 million that they say is their starting point, or trading a big contract. And the Mariners really only have two. And it's either Luis Castillo or it's Randy Arozarena. And we talked a lot about Luis. We're not even sure what we can get. You might actually be able to get something legitimate for Luis. I don't know. Or you might just have to salary dump him. And this is a little better than the Geno salary dump. I actually like Harris quite a bit, and Birdsong's flash at the big league level. And those are two guys that kind of go into the bullpen pile. And Birdsong maybe, is in the rotation in AAA and is that guy that you go to. He's the Logan Evans or whatever, and he certainly has a higher upside than those guys. So you're not getting nothing for Luis, but you'd probably rather just hang on to Luis in an ideal situation. But again, that would require either A, we're basically done if we don't make this trade. And B, are you actually better if you just bring back Naylor and Donovan? Are you actually significantly better than you were last year? It's hard to say. So it really is not an easy decision to make. And there's just not a lot of teams when you kind of go down the list, like, okay, who's willing to take on salary, who needs starting pitching, who pitches in a pitcher's ballpark, and all of that. There's really not a ton of options. Like San Diego is one, but they're trying to remove salary. San Francisco is probably the best one. Maybe the Yankees down the line, maybe the Red Sox, but there are a lot of, big name pitchers that are expected to move this winter. Kodai Senga is apparently being shopped heavily right now. That's surprising. And obviously Tarek Skubal's out there, and Freddie Peralta is probably going to get shopped, especially if Woodruff accepts his qualifying offer today, which he probably is going to. There are a lot of big name starters out there who are making less money than Luis who are going to be out there in trade. And that makes things difficult. That muddies the waters a little bit. So, yeah, this is the best we can come up with. It's not a good situation either way, but I do think this is kind of a good middle ground on what you could get for Luis, depending on how much money you eat, while saving the Mariners enough money for us to do other things with that money. So it's kind of trying to, thread the needle here a little bit. I don't mind if Luis is here next year. It's probably what's best. But I do think ultimately it's just really hard to actually build a better team with the budget restrictions that we are working under if you're not going to trade Luis and you're not going to trade Randy.
So after the first three moves that we made, Naylor, Donovan, and Herrin, our payroll was at 156.2. This trade now brings us down to 138.1 in payroll. So what are we going to do with that money? Well, we're going to repurpose most of Castillo's money into bringing back Jorge Polanco on a 2-year, $28 million contract, which includes a $15 million third-year option with a $2 million buyout. So he's guaranteed $30 million over 2 years. He's going to do what he did last year for us. He's going to mostly DH, and then if we need him to, he'll play some second base.
We're hoping Cole Young really steps up and takes that job, but if he doesn't, we wanted to make sure we had a viable backup plan at second or third, which is why we traded for Donovan, but also, you get to a point where, hey, Polo can play second, and if Canzone is really hitting well, he can DH primarily, like they did basically to wrap up this season. That's a real possibility. They have to do that again. And so we wanted to bring Polo back to make sure that, hey, if Cole Young does take off, great. We have a primary DH who can move around a little bit, give certain guys days off and whatnot. But we have a primary DH, and now we've added Donovan on top of retaining, Naylor and Polo. So we feel like we've replaced the three big bats that the Mariners have, are going to or would have lost. Two of them are just re-signs. That's fine, whatever. But the other one is Donovan, who, while very different from Gino, is still a valuable offensive piece because he gets on base a ton and he doesn't strike out. And the defense is probably going to be improved.
Better fit for the ballpark, probably.
Right. Also saving about $15 to $20 million in payroll space if you're going to try and sign Gino. So, yeah, we feel like we've replaced the bats pretty well. And we did it with without having to trade a top 4 or 5 prospect in the system, and without having to spend as much as we would have if we just brought back, Polo or just brought back Gino as well. So I think there is a big plus here. And Polo just still makes a ton of sense. We'll probably talk about Polo. Well, I don't know. We will this week, but obviously there was some news about him this morning that came out that he's willing to wait out the market. I just say I'm not willing to wait out Polo. So I'm not holding off on any moves until January when Polanco decides to sign. But I do think that this is ultimately about where he's going to end up in terms of AAV. Whether or not he gets a third guaranteed year, I don't know. But I do feel like our AAV and our structure is pretty close to on point.
And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, if you want to hear from me and Colby even more and help support the show, we have a Patreon. It's called Control the Zone. And on there, we talk Mariners, Seahawks, all that good stuff. For more information, go to patreon.com/Control the Zone. Link in the description. And like I said earlier, if you want to hear the process of putting together this offseason plan, all the names we threw out there, all the ideas we threw out there, you can hear pretty much all of that stuff on the last few episodes of CTZ that have come out over the last few weeks. So so to recap again, Josh Naylor's back, obviously. Brennan Donovan, we acquired him via trade. And we're bringing back Jorge Polanco as well on the offensive side of things. So I guess we'll quickly just tell you what our plan is there in the infield. So again, Polo is primarily going to DH, and then he'll play some second base. He is an option to play more second base if need be. But right now, Brennan Donovan's going to be our third baseman, which he hasn't done a lot, but he should be fine there. And we're going to give some runway here to Cole Young to try and take that job and run with it. And like we said over the last few weeks, if you're going to hand the keys to one of Ben Williamson or Cole Young at either second or third base, we'd be far more comfortable doing that with Cole Young, because obviously he has the prospect pedigree, and we think he's going to be a pretty good player eventually. So we're going to see if he can be a pretty good player right now. And if not, by that point, Cole Emerson should be ready to get his first cup of coffee in the big leagues and see if he can stick. We could move Brendan Donovan to second base. Again, Jorge could go play some second base as well. So we have some safeguards for Cole Young, and there's another one that we'll talk about a little later on that we'll put in place. But for now, I want to talk about the Luis Castillo replacement, because we've talked about this since last year. Like, if you're going to trade Luis Castillo, you need to go out and properly replace him, which makes the whole situation, complicated. Like, how much money, how much of the money that you're saving on a Castillo deal are you going to be reinvesting in just backfilling his spot in the rotation? So initially, we were going to trade for Jeffrey Springs of the A's. We had that written down. Like, we sat on that for a few days. Like, we thought that was going to be a part of the plan. Springs, though, was making like $11 million. And, over the course of the time that we had, made the Springs deal, or at least, like, we had that written down in pencil in our plan, to the time that I decided to, or, we decided to pivot. We had done another Fan Fiction Friday or a Mailbag Monday or something like that. And, we're getting Tarek Skubal questions or trade proposals. We're getting Joe Ryan questions and trade proposals. And I'm like, why is no one asking about MacKenzie Gore? Because I think there's some people in the industry that think, if you laid out all three of them, they would say Gore is the likeliest to move this winter. Now, Gore isn't as good as Joe Ryan or Tarek Skubal right now, at least. Probably never when it comes to Skubal.
When it comes, yeah.
maybe he's got
probably
a shot
not.
to catch. Yeah, maybe he's got a shot to catch Joe Ryan, but yeah, probably not when it comes to Skubal. And then I looked at his arbitration projection, and he's only projected to make $4.7 million. So I'm like, why not just make a better trade offer for Gore? Because like our Jeffrey Springs deal was like, it wasn't anything insane, but it would sting a little bit. But why not just beef it up? But why not just beef it up and go get a better pitcher with much higher upside, who is under club control not just this year but next year, and MacKenzie Gore, and fits perfectly for what like we need in terms of like the payroll and all that. Like, he works perfectly. So we're trading for MacKenzie Gore, and we're sending Harry Ford, Logan Evans, and Ty Pete to the Nationals to get it done. And so we used two trades as kind of like a baseline to just kind of get the ball rolling, because both of these pitchers had 2 years left of club control at the time that they were traded, just like MacKenzie Gore. The Dylan Cease deal, going from the White Sox to the Padres, and last year's Jesus Luzardo trade from the Marlins to the Phillies. Those two trade comps are not perfect. Dylan Cease had a couple of 4-win seasons under his belt. He was coming off of a 3.5-win season before he was traded. MacKenzie Gore has never had a 4-win season before in his life, right? But he's also coming off of a better year than Luzardo was coming off of last year, by far. Gore is coming off of a 2.9 F4 season, I think 2.8, somewhere in there. Luzardo was like, he posted like a 5 ERA. I think he was a sub 1 F4 pitcher last year.
Right.
So we kind of wanted to split the difference on that. So Starlin Caba, and there was an outfield prospect that went from Philly to Miami in the Luzardo deal. And then the Padres White Sox deal was Drew Thorpe, who had just come over in the Juan Soto deal. He was a pretty big name, and a couple other guys that were in the top 10 for the Padres farm system. So that's a little too much. But again, like, Dylan Cease, far more accomplished pitcher at the time that he was traded than the MacKenzie Gore is.
Right.
So yeah, so Gore coming off of a nice season. Obviously, I think we all remember what he did on opening day against the Phillies when he struck out 13 Phillies hitters.
Dominated the Mariners for 6 innings at T-Mobile Park.
Yeah, but in the end, wrapped up his year 4.17 ERA rather, with a 3.74 FIP, 10.43 Ks per nine, 3.61 walks per nine. It was a step back year from what he did in 2024, though. I would say the strikeouts went up, but everything else kind of got worse numbers wise. And he started giving up a lot of hard contacts. Which was kind of the big issue. And, MacKenzie Gore, out of all qualified starters over the last few years, has the highest batting average on balls put in play.
Which is often misattributed to being unlucky. But when you also have some of the highest exit velos against you, it's not all that unlucky. So it's command and control, mostly command when it comes to Gore. But also, pitching in T-Mobile Park helps a lot of pitchers.
It does.
And, Nationals Park, I don't know if that's what it's called or not. I don't know what its technical name is. But I believe it grades out as pretty neutral. So it's a big upgrade park-wise. And obviously the Mariners pitching development has, just proven to be significantly better than that of the Nationals. And I do think that Gore is a good fit here. And I actually think the Mariners are a good trade partner because they have the one thing that the Nationals desperately need. And that is a warm body who can actually play catcher at the major league level.
Yeah.
Because the Nationals had by far the worst catcher situation in baseball last year. Gilbert Ruiz is a bust. They know it. And neither of them are very good defensively. Neither of them can really hit all that much. And, they don't have a guy in their system that's ready to go to take that spot. So they really could use catcher help. Now, they're obviously kind of doing like a soft reset of their timeline. They're trying to push it baback a couple of years. And it'll be interesting to see what they do or how they kind of handle it, because they have talked about, we do need to, amass as much talent as we possibly can. And it's very clear that they want to, they're moving their timeline from like being ready to compete in 2026 to like 28, 29, somewhere down that range. But they need to do it before James Wood hits free agency. So do they want players who are major league ready, or would they prefer maybe a Felton Celestin who's a couple years away and he'll be up when this team is ready to start competing? Or do they want to, get a guy like Harry Ford, who is going to be their opening day catcher, and they can groom along the way, get them a couple of years of major league experience before they're ready to compete, and they can decide there. There was kind of that conversation, like which way do the Nationals go? I don't know, but I know their catching situation is so bad that Harry Ford is going to be incredibly interesting to them. He has to be.
Yeah.
So, and I also think you also kind of get a little bit of the latter there when we gave you Ty Pete in the deal, is you get kind of this lottery ticket who's a couple years away from even sniffing the big leagues, but the tools are loud and massive, and he could be a part of this thing. And obviously Logan Evans is just kind of there to help them backfill that rotation. But I think this deal is kind of right in the middle of the Cease and the Luzardo trade. I think it's reasonable. I wouldn't want to give up much more than this for MacKenzie Gore, quite frankly, because I have doubts that he's anything more than a pretty good number 4 who will miss bats, but it's there. We know it is. And one other thing to keep in mind with Gore, and this is also a pretty major red flag, he has a pretty consistent trend of getting worse as the season goes. Like he really struggles in the second half of seasons. He's never thrown more than 160 innings. So there are some durability concerns here as well. And that is, a red flag. So I think that's why he's not going to cost multiple top 100 prospects. I see like the Rosenthals of the world be like, oh yeah, he's a top of the rotation arm. It's like, he's not. He is not top of the rotation arm. He is a mid-rotation arm at best right now. He might have the upside of the top of the rotation arm, and I'm sure that's how the Nationals will try and shop him. All I would say to the Nationals is good luck with that. Maybe you find a sucker, but it's not going to be me. Harry Ford is a perfectly good offer. When you add in Ty Pete and Logan Evans as well, it gives them a legitimate shot to be in these conversations. And that's about as much as I would be willing to risk on a guy like MacKenzie Gore, because the upside is real. It's very real. But the downside has won out consistently over his entire career. Yeah.
So, we flip-flopped on that for a while. The Harry Ford, Felton, Ellison thing.
Mhm.
Landed on Ford, which means that we now need to go get a backup catcher.
Yep.
So the resigning
Everybody's
that
favorite move.
everyone was waiting for, everyone was anticipating. Mitch Garver is back, folks, on a 1-year, $3 million deal. Now, pump the brakes. There is an asterisk on this move. We don't want to assume what other teams are going to do independent of like the Mariners' involvement, right? Obviously, this exercise is about assuming a lot, but like for things like other teams non-tendering guys, we're not projecting that for this offseason plan. We don't feel comfortable doing that. But if Jonah Heim gets non-tendered by the Rangers, or if Luis Torrens gets non-tendered by the Mets, we would rather give this offer to those guys. So that's the asterisk here. But in general, Garver, very familiar with your pitching staff. He has been able to stay healthy over the last couple of years. He's been fine behind the plate, and he's been a fine hitter relative to how backup catchers hit, right? He just
about a league average bat who's a backup catcher.
Yeah, he just, obviously wasn't anywhere close to the guy that you thought you were acquiring a couple of years ago.
He wasn't worth $12 million. Is he worth $3 or $4 million? Yes.
So we still had a bit of money to play around with. We actually had more than we thought at the time that we were doing this. But we're signing an old favorite of ours, Willie Castro, utility man, to a 1-year, $7 million deal. Now, Castro, someone we talked about a lot in the build-up to the trade deadline when he was still with the Twins. He did get traded, not to the Mariners, but to the Chicago Cubs, and he was god awful. It was terrible. Yikes. Yeah. But we're going to take the shot on him bouncing back here. It's a 1-year deal, $7 million, whatever. Gives me versatility. You can play a bunch of different positions. He hit lefties well this year, at the very least. Maybe not over his entire career, but this year he was an above average hitter against the left-handed pitching. And the Mariners, frankly, needed to get a better right-handed hitting option off of their bench against left-handed pitching. And this is another safeguard potentially in place in case, Cole Young doesn't work out, right? So it's another guy that could fit in there at second base. He can also play some third. You can play some right field, play some left field. And there's a bunch of different stuff that we can do with Willie Castro. And we felt with the money that we had available, that was the best use of it. We did weigh instead giving this money to a reliever. Talked about like the Michael Kopechs of the world and the Hobie Milners and the Danny Coulombs and guys like that. But yeah, we wound up giving the money to Willie Castro.
Yeah. Again, this is a hedge against Cole Young. It's a kind of a hedge against Emerson and Williamson because he can play both of those spots, but also, and perhaps most importantly, it's a major hedge against the right field platoon of Canzone and Robles because, there's a possibility here that Willie Castro can handle one side of that platoon. There's really no splits in his career. He's been the same hitter WRC plus wise against righties and lefties. So there's a chance he's a switch hitter. He can handle one of these two sides if Canzone should fail or if Robles should not get back to what he was a couple months ago, that he can handle that position, or maybe he just wins it outright and he is the right fielder and Robles is the true fourth outfielder and Canzone is a bench piece for you. Like there is a lot of possibility here. Last year before he was traded, he hit 245, 335, 407. It's really good. That's really solid. Especially for a guy who can play multiple spots and has some pop and can steal some bags. Like that's a really good, solid utility guy, which is kind of what we're signing him to be, a high-end utility guy. But after he went to the Cubs, he hit 170, 245, 240. So which one is the real Willie Castro? Well, it's certainly closer to the first half than the second half. And I think something that really caught my eye and is something that we talked about this summer as well. Is the dude really hits well at T-Mobile Park for whatever reason. He's 351, 429, 541. at T-Mobile Park. Now that's only in 41 at bats or plate appearances, so it's not a ton, but it's something, and he's produced here. So I really like Willie Castro. I still think he fits. That's $7 million, $8 million, whatever it's going to be. I think he is a perfect replacement for Dylan Moore, and he is yet another player on this roster who can play multiple positions to give me as much flexibility as possible. And if it doesn't work out, it's really not that big of a gamble because I don't need him to be an everyday player. If he can take one of those jobs, great. I'm happy, but I don't need him to do it. If he does, it's just a bonus.
All right, so last trade here, small one. This guy's not even going to make our 26-man roster. It was just something that we wanted to do, just kind of on the back end. We're trading for David Hamilton of the Red Sox utility infielder. We're sending them Ricardo Cova. We know that the Mariners had interest in Hamilton last year during the Luis Castillo trade talks. He's one of the fastest runners in the game. He's still got a minor league option left, so decided to take the shot there on someone to just get in the mix there with Leo Rivas, Willie Castro, Brock Rodden eventually for some of those utility spots on the Mariners roster. So yeah, and then we do this every year with the offseason plan. We just offer a bunch of minor league deals with spring training invites to guys that we think are like maybe on the fringe of they might get a major league deal, or like it's pretty clear that they're going to only get a minor league deal if they do sign with a team. So we just throw out a bunch of these, and it's like if they accept them, they accept them. If not, but these are just guys that we have interest in on minor league deals, basically. So that's Andrew Nardi, it's Taylor Saucedo, Dane Dunning, Jonathan Loaisiga, Colin Snyder, who's officially a free agent again, Trent Thornton, Jose Urquidy, Tom Murphy, Matt Mervis, Jonah Bride, Brendan Rodgers, Ildemar Vargas, and Garrett Hampson. So that is the plan. And it all comes out to a final payroll of $163.6 million. So we got in well under budget there. Some of that is because I miscalculated initially. Whoops. But also that gives us room in case, we're off on some things and, maybe the MLB trade rumors projections are a little bit off, all that stuff. So an explanation of the final payroll. So between Josh Naylor, Jorge Polanco, Willie Castro, Brennan Donovan, MacKenzie Gore, and Mitch Garver, we added $52.6 million in 2026 payroll. All other players acquired are pre-arbitration. And again, some of these numbers are projections by MLBTradeRumors.com, so that could fluctuate a little bit. And again, the Giants are taking on $36.2 million of Luis Castillo's contract. We retained $12 million paid out in $6 million increments over the next 2 years. And then if his option vests or whatever, that's up to them. That's up to the Giants to figure out. So our projected 26-man roster consists of Brian Wu, Logan Gilbert, George Kirby, MacKenzie Gore, Bryce Miller, Andres Munoz, Gabe Spire, Matt Brash, Edward Bizzardo, Riley O'Brien, Tim Herrin. And then the last two spots here, we have Carlos Vargas and Gregory Santos, but they both have asterisks next to them because they're just placeholders for competition. There's going to be a bunch of guys competing for that spot.
Birdsong, Harris,
Birdsong, Harris, Ortiz, like Amina, Kowar, etc., like a bunch of guys. Tyler Cleveland, another one, Emerson Hancock. So yeah, Cal Raleigh and Mitch Garver are the catchers. Josh Naylor, Cole Young, Brennan Donovan, JP Crawford, Jorge Polanco, and Leo Rivas are the infielders. Julio Rodriguez, Randy Arozarena, Victor Robles, and Dominic Canzone are the outfielders. And then our utility man is Willie Castro. The rest of the 40-man roster on the pitching side, Hayden Birdsong, Tyler Cleveland, Emerson Hancock, Jackson Kowar, Casey Legumina, Ryan Lutos, Robinson Ortiz, and Cole Wilcox. And the position players, Ryan Bliss, David Hamilton, Miles Mastrobuoni, Ben Williamson, Samad Taylor, and Rylan Thomas. Kowar, Legumina, Mastrobuoni, and Taylor are all out of options. So they have to make the club out of spring training. We could have gotten super in the weeds and traded those guys and then added some guys to the 40-man, but we'll let the real life Mariners worry about that stuff.
Indeed.
And then we got some projected lineups here. This was just something that I threw together last night just to give you kind of an idea of how things could look. I got one versus right-handed pitching, one versus left-handed pitching. Against right-handed pitching, Brendan Donovan leading off, playing third. Cal, Julio, Josh Naylor, Jorge Polanco DHing. Randy Arozarena out and left. Dominic Canzone and right. Cole Young at second. JP Crawford to round things out. And then against left-handed pitching, got Randy leading off. Got Cal hitting second, Julio hitting third, Jorge Polanco hitting fourth and DHing, Josh Naylor hitting fifth. Got Willie Castro hitting sixth and playing second base. Brendan Donovan hitting seventh, Victor Robles playing right field hitting eighth, and then JP to round things out once again. So there you have it. The offseason plan. What do you guys think? Let us know down in the comments below. What would you do differently? What would you do with that extra $6.4 million that we didn't spend? Probably on a bullpen arm. That's probably like my biggest regrets, I guess, if you want to talk about that, like the thing that we wish that we did or what have you.
Let me spin it for you this way, Ty. Ty and I decided to carve out about $7 million for the Locked On Mariners Community Edition. So you guys tell us, we gave you $7 million. You guys put the finishing touches on this plan and let us know how we are spending that last $7 million in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for listening. Ty, take us home.
Yeah, it was all planned. It was all planned all along. So there you go. Let us know down below what you would do with that extra cash. All right. Well, that is going to do it for our show. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. For Colby, Patnode, I'm Dane Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at @LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Dane Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. We're also on Blue Sky. You can follow me at TDG, Colby at MLB Colby, and the show at Locked On Mariners. You can also find us on Instagram at Locked On Mariners. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.